You spoke the other night, and you had a lot of amazing things to say, and we wanted to make sure we get you in studio here to talk about it.
Appreciate that.
So, what do we know? I know what we're hearing. First of all, can I give you my belief that?
Please feel free.
Right off the bat,
Yeah.
that Syria was a much different place. Syria was, we think of these countries that we see on the news. We see bombs blowing up, and we see guns and all of this unsafe stuff. Syria was a beautiful place, and somewhere along the line, I believe the Obama administration. I believe it's Obama. It could have been prior. Could have been Bush, but I'm pretty sure the Obama administration felt that we needed to once again remove a government from office, but we just can't do that. So we go in with the CIA and we create unrest. And then it develops into what we have today. And that's just my assessment. I don't know if I'm correct, but what are your thoughts?
Well, you're correct to some extent.
Yeah.
Syria was a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Last time I visited was 2009. A thriving, beautiful place. The economy is booming.
Yeah.
People are happy.
They actually have cell phones. They have...
Well, I still have cell phones.
Yeah.
Actually, I just contacted my nephew in Damascus on
Right.
a cell phone.
Yeah.
So even till now, with all what's going on, they still have their cell phones going on, the internet. So it was a thriving place, a beautiful place, a great people to communicate with,
Yeah.
to enjoy it. At some point, yes, a decision has been made to remove the government, not just Assad himself. And again, this is very complex, goes back in history. And it's not just the West, and let's not just label Obama administration.
Yeah.
It's been a policy of the United States, I would say, to remove Assad. And that's for a variety of reasons, including his backing Hezbollah, his close association with Iran, and some of the terrorist activity, supposedly.
Yeah.
And never been proven, though, that he
Sure,
was
yeah.
involved in it. Accomplices multiple, including Saudi Arabia, including Turkey. So they were the proxy, they were the ones who were financing it and continue to finance it, actually. And it disintegrated into this huge mess called ISIS versus everybody else.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, ISIS don't represent Islam. Let's make it very clear. I grew up in Syria. I have Muslim friends. Our best friends, actually, our next door neighbor, are Sunni Muslims. And they are living next to our house.
Yeah.
They love it. They're great people. And there is no issue with the Sunnis in Syria. What you see is the extremist, twisted version of Sunnis, unfortunately.
And they seem to do what has been done throughout history. As you go in, you find impoverished people who feel that they can't accomplish anything, and they give them this way out, and it's a distorted view of what really is going to happen in their future.
Correct. And actually what they do, they capitalize on the people who are disgruntled for whatever reason.
Sure.
And they give them a purpose to fight for and die for.
Right.
And they promise them everything, including after death. They promise them they're going to go
The
to heaven.
virgins,
All that
yeah.
twisted stuff.
Yeah. And yet, then it gets over to here, and now we're in the middle of a battle over. There are Syrian refugees coming out. We have to close our borders. We can't allow them because ISIS is, and it's potentially possible that ISIS could infiltrate this. What are your thoughts? How should we as a country, in your eyes, react to this?
I think we should not overreact to what's going on. Just proceed with what we've done before. Screen everyone the way we've been screening them. Yes, ISIS can infiltrate the refugees, and who knows about ISIS? Do we have sleeper cells somewhere here in the United States? Who
No
knows?
doubt about it.
There's
Yeah.
no question.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a refugee coming over to cause a problem. It could be a homegrown, but they think
Well-
about it's the ideology, it's their way of thinking. This is what ISIS is. It's not just, they have no borders.
That's the very difficult part of this enemy. ISIS is whoever becomes mentally infiltrated by it.
Correct.
And it could land in Kansas, for God's sakes, and we've seen that happen.
Correct, and that's why we see the Western fighters, some of the people from the West and Europe, going to Syria to fight alongside ISIS. They know nothing about Islam.
Yeah,
They know nothing
yeah.
about that stuff. It's just that they created a reason for them to fight and enjoy that.
Can I ask, are you religious, and if so, what religious?
I'm a Christian.
Oh, you are a Christian.
I'm a Christian.
I just was curious because you characterized the virgins and everything after as kind of ridiculous bunk, but you don't really hear that too much from believers. So I guess I was just curious what your religious background was.
I find it interesting though, you lived among Muslims, and you didn't walk up, I assume, to someone and meet them, and the first part of the exchange was about their faith. Oh, you're Muslim. It was your neighbor.
Absolutely.
No one is looking into their religion. These are people that can and do live in the world peacefully without all of this crazy. We have to kill the infidel.
Correct.
You know?
Absolutely. And again, I just give you an example. My best friend is my neighbor, and they continue to take care of my mother, who still lives in Damascus.
Wow.
They provide everything she needs. My sister, who lives in Damascus as well, had to move out of her house because it was close to the action. And she doesn't know what happened to her house at this point. She moved into more of a central location in Damascus, where the Christian neighborhood, basically in Damascus, where our house still there. My mother is there. She has Parkinson's disease. She is bedridden. I can't get medication to her, obviously. There is no medicine to provide. So my sister, I would call her, she is one of those internal refugees. She had to move from one place to the another. Luckily, there was another house. Otherwise, I don't know where my sister was.
Christians can't get out.
They can't get out because they don't go to the refugee camps in Lebanon and in Jordan and in Turkey. Mainly, Muslims are going there. The Christians are not designated as a prosecuted class yet, and you have to be designated as such to become a refugee. You have to come through the UN and all of that. So the Christians who are able to flee Syria are going through relatives, let's say, in Europe or the United States. Actually, we have a local family here in this area that brought family from Syria, but they don't go through the routine refugee status. They just go through the immigration process, and that can take forever.
And that is basically a legality we're talking about here.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
It's part of it we don't really we don't understand it. It's certainly not talked about in the media, and I hate to say it's not it's not the great grand story that we tend to eat up in America. We're looking for the battle story, and there's a lot of boring issues in there that are technicalities a part of all of this.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. Just to give you an example of how the Christians life in Syria now, my brother-in-law's family, his sister and her kids and grandkids, about 35, immediate family. They live in a town in central Syria that was taken over by ISIS about 3 months ago. For a while, we knew nothing about them, what happened to them. But then we discovered that they still live there. However, they cannot practice their religious belief. All the crosses, all the icons been removed. The Bibles, obviously, the only church in town got destroyed. And they have to pay tax every month to ISIS.
Wow.
Yeah, talk about this. It's like a protection tax or something, right? Or am I confusing that?
It is like to allow them to live, basically.
Something you see out of the old mob scenes where you go around and you make the collections if you want to live and do business. This is what
the
you
local Sunni Muslims, because they're a minority in that town. However, they've been there for generations, and they live for many, many generations alongside the Muslims. So the Sunnis, the original Sunnis, the Syrian Sunnis who lives in that town, kind of intervened with the ISIS leaders.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be here today.
They would be killed.
Yeah.
There's no question. And the young women will be taken as
And
slaves.
here's another story that we're not hearing: it is the Sunni Muslims that have saved the lives of these Christians. Exactly. Another story that is non-existent in the media.
Right. That's the true Islam I'm talking about. I'm not talking about those twisted-minded ISIS.
Yeah. Direct ties to Syria, and as we're talking, what we're seeing on especially the national media, Fox, NBC, CBS, all of them, CNN. They choose. I hate to say they're in the business of ratings, and they choose certain things and leave out others, and we're not getting the full picture.
Agreed.
Yeah. Agreed. Somebody said here. I'm just to throw a few things out, and Andrew has some others as well. The Christians are the ones that are being persecuted in Syria. They're the only ones we should let in at this point. What are your thoughts?
I disagree. There are good Muslims. I don't want to label all Muslims as being bad. Again, my own experience has been good with Muslims in Syria.
And what about this refugee question? You have people and some of our own local legislators here saying we have to put on a moratorium right now, put together a cease to bring in any additional refugees until we're able to completely vet them out to make sure that they're not being infiltrated by ISIS. Your thoughts on that?
I disagree with that. Again, I think our normal process is adequate to screen all of the potential ISIS infiltrators.
All right, Andrew? These are some listeners that, I don't know why they don't want to call in, they just want to ask this question for
Maybe this is quicker, though.
Okay.
So they have two questions here. One, is there a military draft in Syria? And two, why are so many young male Syrians allowed to leave?
There is a military draft, and the Syrians are allowed to leave who don't meet the criteria to be drafted.
Oh, okay, all right.
Got it. And what the difficulty is now, you have a tug of war going on between the United States and Russia, and Syria is really caught in the middle. But then, out of nowhere, ISIS comes into play. We're both fighting ISIS. What a mess! This is just the craziest thing.
Well, with all due respect to our efforts in the West to fight ISIS, it was
Yeah.
not a real sincere effort. We've been bombing ISIS for more than a year now,
Yeah.
and very few casualties.
What do you bomb? That's the problem. What do we bomb?
Well,
They
supposedly,
don't have. They don't have.
Exactly.
It's not like we're bombing a country. This is not Iraq.
well, no, they have headquarters. They have,
Yeah.
they've seen ISIS move from one area to the another, and they were not even touched. Again, the example I gave you when they took over that town in central Syria, they moved
Yeah.
from northeast Syria to central Syria in the desert. Don't tell me that our intelligence did not discover that.
Why did we not take them out? I don't understand.
Good question for our politicians. I don't know, the policymakers. Were the
It
Russians?
does
are diff-
make you wonder who ISIS is, then, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Are we implicit? Are we kind of letting grow and grow and grow and to fight Assad to achieve the objective that we have been trying to in the West
Very
to
interesting.
achieve? Well, the Russian intervention is different. It's coordinated with the Syrian intelligence. They are precise in their targeting. They've caused a lot of damage to ISIS. There's no question about
Yeah.
that. This is Syria. Whatever is left of Syria will disintegrate even further. He's still the glue holding people together. His leaders, the
Wouldn't
soldiers.
and don't you think we would have learned from Iraq that allowing Saddam Hussein to remain in power would have allowed the region to remain somewhat stable?
But even allowing the Iraqi army to stay in
Correct.
power,
Yeah, that was
intact,
a huge mistake.
biggest mistake. It's the same with us.
Changed everything right there.
Absolutely. And people talk about, Assad only have his own people fighting. Well, again, that's a myth. The defense minister of Assad is a Sunni Muslim.
Yeah,
Oh, it's not even from his own sect, a spin-off of the Shia.
yeah, yeah.
So,
What happened when let's go back to when the president drew the red line, but then backed off? How did that make you feel? So many Americans, we looked and said, this makes America look weak. Why are we're saying we're going to do something that we don't do it? How did you feel about that?
I was happy he's backed off,
Yeah.
actually. Because I don't think it would have been effective. It will make the situation even worse. There's no question about it. By targeting Assad forces and letting the jihadists or ISIS become the main power. Even with Assad still in power and he has the help of Hezbollah, have the
Yeah,
help of
yeah.
Iran and now Russia, fighting a tough battle against ISIS. Because again, the borders are open with Turkey. Oh,
So you
my
believe
God.
that at that point that stepping back, as embarrassing as it was
It is.
the right thing to do. Clearly, using the red line commentary in itself was a huge mistake.
Agreed.
You know,
Bad
but it's
mistakes.
really when it comes to foreign policy, and much of this mess it's been our doing.
Oh yeah.
How do we not criticize ourselves for that?
Again, this is a democracy, a true democracy. So
Yeah.
you have to look back and say, what did we do wrong? But the biggest problem I have, not learning from our mistakes in the past. And to depose of one person, ruin a whole country,
Yeah.
is kind of sick, in my opinion.
Do you stand for the pledge?
Yes.
Okay. Well, listen, that is a very good point. This young lady said she doesn't stand for her whole story was she doesn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Young girl, immature, trying to stand up and do her thing. And
I'm still American.
took
My
some
dad
heat.
actually fought in World War II here in the United States.
Wow.
So, but I still have, obviously, I'm from Syria. My
Sure.
family is there, so.
Very difficult time. This is really tough. It's got to be unbelievably difficult for you to watch on TV.
Very stressful.
All right.
Very stressful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Waleed Albert. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate